The last 20 years, you've been declared a threat to Russian national security. You have a very clear idea about the Russians. What should we be understanding about the way they negotiate? And then I'll come to Wojko as well. But I need to hear from you about is there a degree of naivete here or not?
Total naivete. I was the canary in the coal mine. I had a sort of personal feud with Vladimir Putin long before the war started, and I got to see how this man behaved. And what I've learned about him, and this is all because of the Magnitsky Act, which imposes sanctions on Russia for human rights abuse.
After the death of Sergei Magnitsky.
After the death of my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, and Putin loves his money more than human life, and the idea of sanctioning his money was a great sin. And so we've been at it for 20 years or so, or 15 years. And what I've learned about Vladimir Putin is that he never backs down. He always escalates. And it's a Russian thing. It's not just with me and Vladimir Putin. It's the war. It's any conflict. There's no backing down. The only time that Putin ever backs down is if he's in a position where he has no choice. Putin started this war. This is a war of aggression. At any moment in time, if we wanted the war to end, if he wanted the war to end, he could just end it. He could say, I'm no longer occupying Ukraine, I'm going to withdraw my troops. Ukraine is defending, he's attacking. And so all this talk about peace negotiations, there's only one party to talk to, and that's Vladimir Putin. And if he doesn't back down, and I know he's not going to back down, because if he does back down, he looks weak. If he looks weak, he loses power. If he loses power, he dies.
Do you believe he understands the principle of peace, mir?
The only way that there is going to be peace if he's forced to be in a position. And how do you force him? And some of the things we just talked about forces him, which is if you give the Ukrainians the weapons they need, they can defend themselves. There's another thing which we can do, which is we can deprive Putin of money. And how do we do that? Donald Trump talked about it for several days before the Alaska summit. If he actually had followed through and imposed secondary sanctions on the buyers of Russian oil, on China, India, and Turkey, they wouldn't buy any more Russian oil. And if they didn't buy any more Russian oil, there's nobody else to buy the Russian oil. And if they don't buy the Russian oil, Russia runs out of money after 6 months. If they run out of money after 6 months, then Putin, potentially, without money to pay his soldiers, without money to pay for the Iranian and North Korean weapons, he might then say, okay, now we can talk about some type of negotiation. But you can't negotiate with anybody if they don't want to negotiate. He has no interest in negotiating because he's not in a weak position. There's one more thing we can do. And this is the most obvious thing in the world. We talk about it from time to time. The High Representative just talked about it. We're sitting on $300 billion of Russian money in the West. The United States has just said they're no longer going to fund Ukraine's defense, more or less. The United States makes up 40% of the funding of Ukraine's defense. Is Europe going to come up with that extra 40%? I don't think so. But the easy answer to this whole question is to confiscate the $300 billion and use that to fund the Ukraine's defense. And by the way, if we did that, then Donald Trump, who doesn't seem to want to do anything other than capitulate Ukraine to Putin, is not in a position, he has no more leverage. He's no more leverage. He can't tell anybody what to do if the money is coming from Vladimir Putin to fund Ukraine.